So, years ago, I watched a movie called Tall Men. I was really excited about it. One of my extreme horror author friends on Twitter showed a preview of it, and the preview was really interesting. And so I was like, okay, I'll watch this eventually. So I got Netflix and I watched it, and then I was like, wow, I hate this. So I did a review of it, and my review wasn't great. So the people who were in the movie came to my channel and my Twitter to tell me my review wasn't great. So more or less, I let them bully me into taking the video down and wasn't feeling very confident about myself. So long story short, I'm back to do the review again and do better. However, I think I can see why my review wasn't great, because this movie was so monumentally frustrating and missed whatever point they were trying to make that it fried my brain. The first two times I watched this were all the way back in 2017. Watched it once, just casually. Then I thought, I want to do this for my channel, so I watched it again. However, both times, I just checked out in the last 20 minutes, and I didn't pay attention to anything. So I thought something at the beginning was not wrapped up when it actually was. So we're going to dive into it. This review is going to have spoilers, and I'm going to be coherent, but I'm going to also be harsh. So this movie's about a guy named Terrence McAlbee. We open up with him being like 15, and he's taking a blonde girl up to his room. He tells his grandma they're going to study for a math test or something. I don't remember. It's not important, actually. And she lays her head on his shoulder, and everything. Next thing you know, the lights flicker. Grandma runs upstairs, and she's like, Terrence, what have you done? So it's very clear that Terrence has taken that girl's life. And we cut to maybe 20 years later, and Terrence is having a lot of trouble. He's using money and spending to cope with all of his mental illness and everything. Can't say I can't relate. And he has gotten himself $82,000 in debt. And once I rewatched this yesterday, I was like, yes, that is a lot of debt. If you take away the fact that I owe money on a house, even with my student loans and all my signature loans, just me alone, I do not have $82,000 in debt. I was like, how can one person do that? So that's what the person at the bankruptcy office asks. How can one person do that? And then Terrence says, how about you don't judge me because I already feel bad about this? Fine, fair enough. So he gets sent on his way. Terrence goes home, and then he goes to his job where a bunch of interesting people work. There's this girl with bangs and space buns. Her name's Lucy. And they try and put her out as a love interest for Terrence. And they try to show that her home life is not that great. Her mom she looks like kind of the stereotypical white trash. The messy hair in the robe at noon, smoking a cigarette, being weird, and asking her daughter too many invasive personal questions. And she can't spell soliciting. No soliciting is written on the door, and it's spelled wrong. And then this mother is never mentioned again. So I'm assuming that since Terrence was 15 at the beginning, and then this is now 20 years later, not 25, that Everybody's about in their 30s. And they all go to work in this warehouse where there's an annoying boss with a microphone. No, not a microphone. A bullhorn. I always get those two confused. And there's this weird girl that's subscribed to some tinfoil hat magazine called Conspire, and she goes off for like 3 to 5 minutes about the Babylonian Brotherhood. And they're all lizard men, but they're wearing human suits and all of that stuff. Anyway, they tried really hard to make her seem like the weird girl. Like, they had her hair all pushed back. She was weird and twitchy in her movements, and they put so much under eye makeup on her. Had her stare at the table and not really do very much eye contact, but she has a crush on this guy named Lee who lives in a van. That's just kind of the stereotypical guy that lives in a van. Anyway, there's some useless backstory dropped that Lee once had a thing with the weird girl. I think her name's Edith. And Lucy and Terrence go out on a date. She says it's a romance movie they're going to see, but it's not a romance movie. I honestly think it's footage from another movie this company did. And things look like they're going pretty great for Terrence. He's got a date. He's making friends. And everything's going to be good. And then this mysterious envelope comes, and it's talking about The Card. This company doesn't have a name. It's just called The Card. And he, being weak-willed and everything, signs up. At first, he's very cautious. He only does it in case of emergencies. And then, as if planned by the universe, he has an emergency. His Toyota Corolla, or whatever the hell he's driving, breaks down. And then there's this homeless person that says, "You should know what's going on. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what's happening." And Terrence is like, "Okay, random stranger, sure." And so he goes to the dealership. He buys an older car. I don't know what kind it is. I'm not good at cars. He gets a cool car and everything. And then like a month or two later, he loses his job. And he's just like, well, what the heck am I going to do? And there was a subtle thing with Bullhorn Boss. They ask, what the heck happened to your head? Because his boss has one of those little weird, I think they're called butterfly bandages. You know, you'd think somebody worked in a nursing home for 4 years. They would know what those were called, but I think I blocked those out just like I blocked the last 20 minutes of this movie that was long and painful out. He is fired, and he doesn't know what to do, and he's trying really hard to find another job, and so he starts getting phone calls from the credit card company because he's got this ridiculous statement, and he's like, how the hell? I spent $6,000 on a car. How do I owe you $30,000? And they said, oh, I see what the problem is. You didn't read the welcome letter. At 4% interest, that's done daily. So there's 4% interest compounded daily, plus a bunch of other bullshit fees. You know how credit cards are. Anyway, he's like, I can't pay that. That's ridiculous. How can I pay that? I lost my job. Why can't you guys be considerate? And then it flashes back to him, and they're like, did you read the welcome letter or the contract before you signed up? And like most of us, he said he had read the terms and conditions, but he didn't actually read the terms and conditions. Anyway, things start getting worse for Terrence, and Terrence is already mentally ill and sees stuff that's not there. And this is one of my gripes of this film, that I felt it kind of went on too long in some places. There is a painting Terrence painted that kind of looks like the Black Dahlia, because it's like her mouth is cut and everything, and there's blood and everything. He will stand there and he will stare at it, and he'll say later in the film, it reminds him to take his medication. Now, whatever you gotta do. But oh my gosh, the focus on this painting was to a point where it was like, I am so bored. I am literally so bored with this painting. I look at a lot of creepy paintings. There's The Anguished Man is one of my favorite paintings. There's a painting of Ivan the Terrible taking his own son's life and having crazy eyes. This painting, by comparison, is weak sauce, for lack of a better phrase. So there's a lot of focus on this painting. There's a lot of long shots of Terrence just standing around. They go on a little too long. There was one particularly infuriating scene where after Terrence realizes, hey, this isn't one of my run-of-the-mill hallucinations or whatever. This is 100% real. There's a tall man in my house. He's so tall he almost touches the ceiling. I better call the cops. So he calls the cops, and they come over, and they're such crappy cops. They're kind of douchebaggy, and I was like, yeah, these guys are definitely the villain. You're not doing anything to hide that. These cops come over, and this scene went on so long, I was about to start swinging. I get, you don't need to explain it to me like I'm 5, that the scene is supposed to go on a long time so that it evokes an emotion of being frustrated. But the cop is just standing there, knee forward, back and forth, making the floor creak, setting my teeth and the teeth of the main character on end. Wow, that was so annoying. So anyway, these cops suck. Terrence is not getting the help he needs. He's getting harassing phone calls. He's seeing things that aren't there. A bunch of back and forth goes back and forth. The company repossesses Terrence's car, and there's something I better drop beforehand before I forget. As Terrence is driving home in his new car, he waves to this prostitute, and then she waves back a black car that's been following him for a while. And the prostitute sees the black car, and she goes and she runs. Now, the credit card company has come and possessed his car, and now he owes about $6,000 less. And they're saying, hey, you need to pay this or we're going to come to your house and collect the debt. And he knows he doesn't have it. And they could have taken the house. The house is in his name because his grandmother has passed away, so he inherited it. And his friends come over. Lucy hasn't seen him in a while, so she brings him a monkey lamp. Lee is really not wanting to be there. So they come over and they give Terrence this monkey lamp and they ask him how he's doing. He tells them what's going on and he says, I don't want to be here just in case they come by. So let's go to a movie or something tonight. And I think he's going to stay at the bus with Lee. So the plan is in motion to get out of the house. Unfortunately, there's one of the tall men already stalking the place. And there was a sort of clever way to put in what time it was, because Lee looks at Lucy and says, it's 3:00. 3. And then Lucy's like, oh, right, yes, it's medication time. So Lucy takes her medication, and Lee and her try to get Terrence out of the house, And then Terrence says, "There's one in my yard." He grabs a bat that Terrence has been using to defend himself, and he goes out. He goes around the fence, and then Lee is gone. I don't know what happened. So he runs back in, and Lucy was in the house doing some sort of cat's cradle thing, and then she is looking at the camera and looking horrified, and then they're both gone. And here's the thing, there was some foreshadowing because Terrence has hallucinations, and he saw Lee and Lucy as zombies. He's been seeing his grandmother as a zombie. And they could have played on that, like, he's stressed out about this whole thing, and maybe his grandmother is haunting him for real, but his grandmother pulls around the couch after the cops show up and points at them with her scary old dead lady finger. And so the cops, when Terrence calls them again, take forever to get over because they had a flat. They couldn't possibly send anybody else. And they did nothing to hide that these cops were in on this. I think the cops just kind of waste Terrence's time and they leave. And then the tall men show up. And by this time, I am so disengaged. I am so bored with the fake out zombies, the not real ghosts, the flat jump scares that I don't even care that these tall men are showing up to break Terrence's fingers. I don't give a shit. This movie, I don't even really know if it blew its load. I think its load was already blown before the film even started. This movie, started out a lot like Terrence, with nothing, no money, no anything, and it just kept going on its 40 cents an hour. There was not a lot. The scenes were too long. They did this thing that I call horror movie sepia, even though it's not sepia. They washed everybody out to a point where even the two black characters in the movie looked pale. It was like on that one thing on The Magicians, the color correction on this model is kind of racist. It was just not good. And you can't just go and make a monochromatic blue, green, and white color palette and have this gradient on it that makes me wonder if maybe I need to take my glasses. Do my eyes hurt? Do I need sleep? Why is this hazy? Have I taken some sort of, bad mushroom? What's going on? You can't do that in place of actual atmosphere. And that's what frustrates me about these kinds of movies, is they think if they just turn the color gradient up to this, ugly, blurry level, it's still spooky. No. It's okay to have color. It's okay for things to be bright. I don't remember what YouTuber they were talking about, but in the Bye Bye Man, there is this bright, vivid colored opening scene. And that is so rare in horror. It's just no, everything's got to be dark. It's don't make things dark or grade it in a stupid way to make up for the fact you don't actually have a good story or decent jump scares. Okay, I'm going to stop ranting about that right now. But anyway, Terrence tries to run. They've already broken his fingers. He's been on and off of the phone with the guy from the company, the card. He's referring to him by customer 152 because that was the title of the movie originally, Customer 152. And the thing with this, with the whole credit card thing and Terrence being somebody who's not your typical horror movie person, somebody that's already mentally ill, because a lot of them, they take a sane person and then they make them mentally ill. But somebody that's already mentally ill and already seeing hallucinations, it's not typical, but it's not unheard of. They could have gone full speed into a satire a horror comedy with this. But from the jokes they tried, I don't think they're very funny. So I finally forced myself to watch it and pay attention to the last 20 minutes. Terrence goes to the mental institution. He's caught. He's told, hey, you killed your friends. You beat Lucy unrecognizable. We had to identify her via her tattoo, and then I wondered why her shirt was low enough to show a tattoo, because a lot of the times actresses aren't usually allowed to have their tattoos on display. Like in the first 4 or 5 seasons of Charmed, they made the girl that played Piper wear like a little black bracelet to hide her wrist tattoos. So they had that. He saw Lee, he saw Lucy, he saw the dead prostitute. There was no reason to have her in the movie. There was no reason. They just brought her in there to kill her, because I guess their body count was, oh my gosh, 2 and pre-dead grandma. But it would actually be 4 without the dead prostitute. Because we go back to the beginning once Terrence has been arrested and he's been told of his crimes and everything, and he's trying to talk about the credit card company, and they're putting in subtle little hints that maybe Terrence isn't crazy, because the guy said he never sold you a car, and then this guy with a bad wig that, I'm gonna be rude again, the time he was on the screen, even though it was very short, oh my god, it was torture. This guy was just, he was playing the part, and I guess he was playing it well, but this movie, they relied too much on stereotypes. They relied too much on, okay, character is annoying, let's just play that up to 1,000,000 billion. So I noticed that the car dealer guy had a black eye when the other cops, the real cops, came to speak to Terrence. Not the fake cops, which one was called Dick Towner, and then the other guy was called Knotts. Anyway, those 2 cops aren't real. The salesman never sold him a car. The credit card company never existed. They can't find any record of it. I don't know how that's possible. Social security number, whatever. So he says, this doctor with some sort of accent, like very light German or Austrian or something, I don't know. He says, let's talk about, I do believe her name was Alicia, the blonde girl from the beginning that we know died. To make a long story short, Alicia was Terrence's best friend, and they used to play make-believe when they were young, and Alicia started changing, and Terrence didn't understand it, and then she asked him to do something horrible. She asked him to take her life, so she got in the bathtub, and he tossed the toaster in there, or a radio. Yeah, it was an old-timey radio. Anyway, Terrence took a life when he was 15, and he was sent to live in an institution, and then when he came back, his grandma died, and now the people have him convinced that it never happened, everything was all baloney, and probably just his pills stopped being as effective, or he maybe forgot to take them and everything. And in all of this, he probably thought he was doing that thing for Alicia. And they set it up because they set up Lucy having a bad home life, just like Alicia had, because Alicia's father was being creepy and dirty with her. And Lucy's mother was weird and inappropriate with her. And he lived in a bus. So, and then Terrence just goes off to the nut house. And then we start over with this douchey guy back at the bankruptcy place again, and he's like, yo, you want to hurry this up? It's taking forever. And they've changed the look of the cop, of Detective Knotts, and he's working for the bankruptcy place. Now, that's not much of a reveal. The way these cops were acting, you knew one of them was full of shit. And yeah, it happened to be that guy. The one that stood on the floor, back and forth, creaking the floor to a suicide-inducing length. Oh my God. So that's the whole movie. I would rate it 1 star. I tried to watch this again because I did feel like the review I gave at first was not fair and was not good. So I did delete it and all of that stuff. However, as I rewatched it, I think I hate it more. I did kind of go in with a little bit of in being like, this is going to be an unenjoyable experience. But I've went in like that with other movies I've reviewed, like The 100 Feet and that one I think is called The Man in the Shadows. For some reason, my brain is processing it by its working title, The Hat Man. And I went in thinking, gosh, I remember these movies as being hot, steaming piles of garbage. And then I went in and I rewatched them. And you know what happened? I was wrong. I still didn't enjoy them to the level I would have liked, but I found I was wrong on my first viewing. This one, I found I was wrong on my first and second viewing, and upon my third, I realized it was more annoying than I remember. This movie just failed in so many ways. Its jump scares fell flat. It failed to get me on the side of the character. The sound mixing was atrocious. It did this thing where even though I watched it on my phone, and my iPhone has a blown speaker, why was every noise like a nail gun to the ear? I hate this about horror movies. Every place has hardwood floors, and every person clomps across them like their shoes are made of 10 pounds of iron or something. And you know what I've noticed? You could probably even release a horse into a house like that with hardwood floors, and that horse wouldn't make near as much noise as these protagonists walking around with their shoes stomping on the floor. I don't know. It's something that is a sensory problem that I hate. So when Terrence is opening the letters, it is like Dolby Digital fucking surround sound with the paper crumbling and all of that stuff. And then when he's scared because he saw a tall man out the window, I hear every wet mouth noise he's making. And I apologize if while listening to this you heard my wet mouth noises. I'm trying to hold the microphone far enough away for that. But sometimes the music in the background was overpowering to a point where it's like you're trying to compensate for the fact that this scene is not scary. It's not foreboding or anything. This scene is just, I am so bored. I don't know. I want to say that the acting was better than I remember, but at the same time, everybody was kind of just one note, the whole thing. There wasn't a lot of varying. If I could say something, my favorite character was Lee. Lee would have been a more interesting protagonist because he politely reminds Lucy it's time to take her medication. He's irritated at Terrence because he's kind of like Terrence is a bit of a loser and everything. And I think Lee would have been a more interesting protagonist because then they probably wouldn't have wasted a whole bunch of jump scares, a whole bunch of creaking in the floor, a whole bunch of hallucinations that didn't have anything to do with the plot. You can't just make a character mentally ill and have them see things and use it as an excuse to throw in a boatload of jump scares. I was so bored. I was bored on a scale of 1 to please end me so I don't have to watch this anymore. Yeah, I was at a million, billion, zillion. Anyway, I don't think I have very much more to say about this. You could have removed the dead prostitute. You could have removed her character altogether. There's some nice things they did, like the subtle foreshadowing with the car salesman getting his black eye, and with Bullhorn Boss having that bandage on his head. There's ways that you can tell that this company trapped Terrence in order to get to him. But what's the motivation? Are we trying to teach people to be smarter with their money, even though they're mentally ill and, like, just spending to feel better? Is that the message? Don't screw yourself over and get a lot of debt. I'm just kind of blanking on what they were trying to do, what their message was, and how it really, really fell flat. Flat as Kansas. So ultimately, 1 star. Upon rewatching it to try and give it a better review, better as in more coherent and less full of bad jokes, I knew I wasn't going to give it a glowing review because as I started watching it again, I was like, wow, all the annoying crap that I remember happening in this movie is still annoying. So I guess you could say it left an impression on me because 7 years later, I'm out here being like, hey, this movie was still stupid. And I even remembered the main character's first name. And who knows, maybe when I repost this, they'll challenge me again and say how I'm a bad person, and even this review was bad because how dare I use words like boring and say that the color grading was ugly. Have a good day.